Good morning. I just wanted to record a little something that the Lord has, this is just one thing that God has been using to comfort me through a very uncomfortable time. And so I just wanted to share. If it even encourages one person, I hope that's beneficial to you. Also, I'm not doing this live because kids, we don't know what's going to happen with them. So I didn't want to waste any time. If I could just get on here and record this, I don't think it'll be too long, but I just wanted to encourage y'all with something. Psalms 57. I'm just going to read the whole psalm and then just say a couple things about it. So Psalm 57, it's David writing when he fled from Saul and he went into hiding into a cave. In verse 1, be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, for my soul trusts in you, and in the shadow of your wings I will make my refuge until these calamities have passed by. I will cry out to God Most High, to God who performs all things for me. He shall send from heaven and save me. He reproaches the one who would swallow me up. God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. My soul is among lions. I lie among the sons of men who are set on fire, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have dug a pit before me. Into the midst of it they themselves have fallen. My heart is steadfast. O God, my heart is steadfast. I will sing and give praise. Awake, my glory. Awake, lute and harp. I will awake in the dawn. I will praise you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing to you among the nations. For your mercy reaches into the heavens, and your truth unto the clouds. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be above all the earth. And so just a few things that David just kind of exemplifies for us in the Psalms. In this calamity, as he explains it in verse 1, he knows it's temporary. In verse 1, he says, until it has passed by. So that means he knows it's going to pass by. It's temporary. He knows who to call to. He knows that God is full of mercy, and he knows to ask God for his mercy. That he needs the mercy of God. He trusts in God, and he knows where he will find his refuge in the wings, under the shadow of his wings, which also refers to Psalms 91. So he also knows in verse 3, God will save. God will perfect him. God will perform on his behalf. Why? Because he's done it before. He's going to do it again. And he knows this is temporary. And he knows that any good can only come from God the Father. So then in verse 4, David starts to explain, verse 4 through 6, the state of his soul. And remember that we are a spirit. We have that soul. And we live in a body, which is flesh. And so the spirit man and the flesh man are constantly waging war against the soul. And so David explains that the state of his soul right now is being overwhelmed by what he's feeling in his flesh, by what he can see in the physical. His soul is in a bad circumstance. He feels very vulnerable among evil men. He feels depressed. His soul is bowed down, it says. He feels like there's a pit dug before him and a net set before his steps. It's uneasy. The times are uneasy. The times are depressing. It's a temptation right now to fall into depression, into being drugged down, being weighted down. Okay? Because we are still in a fallen world. We are still among sinners. It says in verse 4, he lies among the sons of men. They're set on fire. Their teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. So to me, that's explaining men in their state before God, before they have everlasting life through Jesus Christ. And so we are among sin. We are among unbelievers. We are among the effects of sin, even in believers' lives. I love, even between verse 4 and verse 6, which are both explaining the state of his soul and depressing. Right in the middle is verse 5. He still says, be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be above all the earth. So even in our dark circumstance, our heart, we should still be exclaiming, God, I want you to be exalted. And guess what? He can. He will be exalted, even in our depressing times. Why? Because there is a dawn coming. There is a redemption coming from that pit. So in verse 7, David exclaims that now the state of his heart, his spirit man, is steadfast in God. His heart is steadfast. So though his soul is depressed and it is weighted down, his heart has remained steadfast. Why? Because he knows who God is. He knows who he is in God. He knows that God never changes, though his circumstances change. And so this is the best, to me, this is the good news. In verse 7 and 8, through the end, he says, I will awaken the dawn, in verse 8. So he's talking about the dawn of his, like, the new day from his depression, the new day upcoming out of that pit, upcoming out of this calamity, this tragedy, this bad circumstance. When is his soul going to finally feel redeemed, finally feel uplifted? He says he has the power in his own hands to do that. How? By singing and giving praise. He says, awake, awaken the dawn with the lute and the harp. I will give you praise, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing to you among the nations. Because in verse 10, he has come to the realization that the two things he stated that he needed in verse 3 at the beginning of this psalm, when he was crying out to the Lord, I only need your mercy. I only need your truth. He stated that that's what he needed, because that's what we all need, mercy and truth from the Lord. He realizes in verse 10, for your mercy reaches unto the heavens, and your truth unto the clouds. So the two things that he needed are already there. They're already infinite, and they're already extending to him from heaven, from the Lord, at all times. And so how now, since his heart is steadfast and his heart has come to this revelation that your mercy, it was displayed on the cross. Your truth is all around me. Your truth is in this heart of flesh that you have given me. How do I now uplift my soul, which has been depressed? through singing, through praise, through worship. That is what aligns his soul to the truth that is in his heart. So we need God's mercy and truth in the midst of a depressing situation. You can welcome the dawn of a new day in your circumstance by praising and singing. You can do it in confidence because God's mercy and truth are endless. They are infinite to the heavens, and they are in endless supply, abundant supply. My steadfast heart must express its position through praising the Lord, through worship, through song. That's what the lute and harp are, right? They're instruments, they're music. Through that worship, our souls will be aligned with the truth in our hearts. And this is how God is exalted. This is how God's glory is lifted up, how he is glorified above all the earth in verse 11 as our conclusion. Lord, be exalted. Lord, let your glory come above all the heavens and the earth. How does this glorify God? How is God glorified in this? This is when we are put in a difficult situation, which is meant to build our faith. It's meant to take out the impurities. It's meant to sanctify us. It's meant to point out our sin that we still live in. And God's saying, sin is not for my people, and I want to redeem you of that. So it's bringing sin before our eyes so that we can repent and turn from it and be sanctified. So this circumstance, this bad, depressing time that we're in, is a good thing. We should be joyful throughout many various trials, knowing that it's producing faith and perseverance within us, so that we're mature when we arrive at heaven with our Father. He wants to receive mature believers, not the babies, not the immature, only have been taken of the milk of the word, but of the meat of the word. And so let us rely on God during this time. Rely on his mercy, his truth. Align your heart with his truth. Be steadfast in your heart. And if you don't want to be overtaken and depressed by this time, because depressed Christians are ineffective Christians. They're stale, okay? And it's okay to be depressed. It's okay to feel certain things, but we feel those, our emotions are God-given so that we know what's going on in our hearts, in our souls. And so whenever we feel a certain way, it's to address it, and it's to come to the Lord with it, and it's to lay it at his feet so he can lift us up, because we cannot lift our own selves up. He lifts us up through our praise and through our worship, because worship is submitting to him. It's surrendering what we can't control into his hands. And then also, believers, people of faith, are going to come out better after this circumstance. And those who don't have God, they don't have hope in the Lord, they don't have the faith, the truth of the word, it's going to be very difficult for them. And so that's how God is glorified, because he says, these are my people, and I give them what they need in their difficult circumstances for their good, to bring them up. And it's for his name's sake. It's not even for you. It's because his name is on you, and he upholds his own name. So again, it has nothing to do with us, but it's a testimony to God. And it's a witness to God in the eyes of unbelievers. So be encouraged during this time. Stay in worship, stay in prayer specifically, because people are watching, and it's not to say be careful of your behavior, and make sure people don't find you depressed, and make sure people don't find you upset, because that's not how a Christian would act. That's not true. The truth is that people see you depressed, people see you upset and worrisome, but then they see that change. They see that dawn of your new day, maybe when they're not having that dawn, and that uplifting time. And so that is a life of a Christian. When we are upset, we are worried, we are depressed, and then God lifts us up. And we can tell others it's because of Jesus Christ. It's because of God. So I hope that helps you any this morning, and encourages me. His mercy and his truth are endless. They're infinite.